Worn down by winter, we look at how refugee groups adapt their aid for Iraqis as cold weather sets in. Healthy tips for holiday trips. Smart steps for staying well during air travel this holiday season. Not everyone's at the mall today. The Knights of Columbus head downtown to give coats to kids in need. And sneak peek, we go behind the scenes at the studio where the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade comes to life. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 28th, 2014. Good evening from our family to yours. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. And during this time of Thanksgiving, Catholics in the U.S. are joining Pope Francis in praying for peace in Iraq. Displaced Christians there are looking for signs of hope, even with no end in sight to the ISIS onslaught. Despite months of targeted U.S. airstrikes, militants with the Islamic State are fighting to control large territories in Iraq. The terrorists are brutal and relentless. They execute some prisoners. Others they force to convert. Pope Francis has gone on record several times, strongly condemning their actions.
All this gravely offends God and humanity. Hatred is not to be carried out in the name of God.
At least 120,000 Christians were forced from northern Iraq in July and August, as ISIS spread its control across portions of both Iraq and Syria. Most of those Christians have still not been able to return to their homes, and many don't see a future for their people in their home country.
How can any pastor of souls see his faithful suffering and not speak for them? People often think that persecution was in the early church, and there's very little of it now. In fact, as the Pope reminded us in one of his tweets, there's a terrible persecution going on all throughout the world now.
Monsignor Charles Pope, the pastor of Washington's Holy Comforter St. Cyprian Church, says Catholics in the U.S. can make a difference for Christians who are so far away. How? With prayer.
And we often forget that every time we say the creed on Sunday, people died for that creed. And people suffered terrible loss because of that creed. So the faith is costly. And that we should never forget the magnificent gift of the faith to us.
In that spirit, U.S. bishops are sharing a prayer from the Patriarch of the Chaldean Church as a sign of unity among Christians. For those displaced in Kurdistan, they'll need prayer and practical help, as makeshift tents offer very little help in the winter months. Now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Well, this day after Thanksgiving traditionally opens the hectic Christmas shopping season. Ahead of that rush, our Mark Irons asked people in D.C. what they think about the long lines and the shopping frenzy of Black Friday.
I don't actually have any plans to go shopping that day. It's pretty crowded, so I'll be at home with the kids.
I might go ahead and actually do it this year because of the fact that they got awesome deals. I get paid that day.
I admire the stores that are advertising now that they do not open on Black Friday.
I usually go every year. It's a tradition with me and my friends. We always go out and camp out the night before and try and see what we can get. We usually end up trying to get TVs and I guess other appliances.
I can't stand it. It's stupid. I don't like the crowds. I'd rather sit at home. But the deals are good, because my brother, he got a 55-inch TV for $300. And that's a deal that's worth trampling someone for.
If you made a last-minute shopping run, you might have noticed Kmart was open Thanksgiving morning. Kmart stores have been open on Turkey Day for the past 23 years. Last year, the retailer was criticized by some customers for not giving employees time off to have dinner with their families. This year, the store is staying open for 42 hours straight, closing at midnight tonight. Well, many of us are traveling on a plane this holiday weekend. We have some tips tonight for staying healthy while flying. Eat smart. Some experts say it's easier on the stomach to eat before you board. But if you do need food on the plane, avoid cold drinks and foods like salads. They say warm foods are easier to digest. Be as active as possible. Experts say just tapping your foot can help blood pumping into your heart, protecting against blood clots. And watch those germs. Bacteria spreads very easily in a closed, dry environment like an airplane cabin. Some Thanksgiving trivia tonight. There are at least 4 places in the U.S. named after this holiday's main course. These are tiny towns. Turkey Creek, Louisiana, the most populous of them, with 435 residents, followed by Turkey, Texas, population 410. Turkey Creek, Arizona is home to 294 people, and Turkey, North Carolina, population 291. Pennsylvania is also home to a couple townships that carry the theme Upper Turkey Foot and Lower Turkey Foot. If you prefer a side dish, join one of the 30,000 people in Butler County, Pennsylvania who live in Cranberry Township. Well, as reported earlier, the ISIS onslaught has forced nearly 2 million people from their homes in Iraq. Jason Calvi takes a closer look at the plight of these people as winter descends.
Living in homes without walls, in tents made of whatever they can find, these people fled the Islamic State.
A lot of people who were escaping ISIS, in fact, when they crossed the border into Kurdistan, were robbed of everything they might have been carrying with them, and some of them had to leave so quickly that they took nothing at all.
The Kurdistan Regional Government and the UN estimate 850,000 Iraqis have found refuge in Iraq's Kurdistan region this year. Daryl Grisgraber of Refugees International visited that area last month, and this week they put out a report on the needs of the people away from home in Kurdistan. One need is housing that can withstand winter, but another is convincing people to move into refugee camps.
A lot of people thought they would just get a tent made of plastic sheeting that would blow down in the wind, and so they just didn't want to be there. There are reinforced tents for winter, as you might imagine. Sometimes there are containers, caravans, that sort of thing.
The president of the Assyrian Aid Society Iraq says there's about 650 schools in his city of Duhok, with the classrooms now housing the displaced.
They are afraid that it's like impossible to return back to Mosul. It is our mission, our goal to create a place for them, a safe haven.
The Chaldean Catholic Archbishop of Erbil wants his flock to remain hopeful.
They have to rely on their faith that tomorrow would be brighter. When this tomorrow would come, it's in the hands of God. All we could do as bishops, priests, sisters, is to be with them.
Chris Pulaski, the Senior Director for Emergency Affairs at World Vision, is joining us. And Chris, you recently were in the area of Iraq where there's so many refugees. Give us an overall picture and maybe a story or two that really touched you.
Sure. We returned not too long ago, myself and Kent Hill, who's a Senior Vice President at World Vision. We were up in Erbil, which is in the Kurdish-controlled area, or it's a Kurdish area of Iraq, and we were able to see, well, a lot of internally displaced people and refugees. So it was hundreds of thousands. We've heard that there are over 800,000 internally displaced people and a couple of 100,000 people coming over from Syria. We saw those people.
Haven't some of these people been displaced more than once?
Oh, it's in the region. In fact, it's interesting to hear the Kurds themselves, the people who are welcoming in the refugees and the internally displaced people, have also been displaced throughout the years. So they themselves have been displaced, are now welcoming in people displaced from other parts of the country and, well, other countries.
And what about the children? Aren't they the ones most affected?
The women and the children are the ones who are most affected. In fact, World Vision works most closely with women and children. That's who we target. That's who we choose to work with in these situations.
With winter, what will this bring for these people who are basically camping in many cases with almost no shelter?
Well, that's our focus right now. So we've been doing distributions of non-food items. We've gotten tarps, and we've gotten blankets, and we've gotten sheets, and we've gotten sanitation kits. But now we see winter's coming. So our thrust right now is going to prepare people for winter. So we're working with faith-based organizations over there. We're working with churches over there. We're working with the government over there to prepare people for winter. So that involves getting tents out, helping people winterize buildings, and also working with churches to help to winterize areas in their facilities.
There are so many ethnic divides in this region. How do you work to bridge those so that you can do the work that needs to be done?
Well, World Vision, we are a Christian relief and development organization, but we work with all people. So in the region, we're working with the Yazidis, which are an ethnic and religious group over there. We're working with Christians, we're working with Shiite, and we're working with Sunni. We believe that we should not politicize aid, but we really just want to meet the needs of the most vulnerable. So that's been our focus.
So one of your partners is Caritas Internationalis. How is that working, and what do you hope to achieve by partnering with Caritas and the others?
Sure. World Vision is part of a group of 10 faith-based organizations that have come together, and we've made an agreement, and we've written down these, well, it's an agreement of how we can work together, but also we're hoping that this will push forward a peaceful settlement in the Middle East, and especially in Iraq and Syria. So we're pushing for a political solution, and then we're also working together for well, the physical solution to meet the needs of the most vulnerable.
Chris, tell us about World Vision's aid distributions to people who have been displaced in Iraq.
Sure. Recently, World Vision has started our distributions for Yazidi populations, for Shiite populations, for Sunni and Christian populations. We've been distributing everything from, well, beds to sheets to blankets to sanitation kits, and now we're really getting ready for winter. So we're helping prepare people to winterize buildings that aren't finished, and also just in general, getting people ready for, well, the harsh winter that's coming in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
And can't there be quite a bit of rain in this area? What happens when people are using foam mattresses, perhaps sleeping on the ground?
We've actually seen that already, where people have tried to, well, stop the rainwater from coming in their tents. It's been a bad situation. So what we're doing right now is we're working to, well, get people in appropriate facilities that are ready not just for the rain but for winter. We're expecting not just the rain to come, but we're expecting snow to come in the next, well, 2 months.
So what can people here in the U.S. who are concerned about our brothers and sisters who are in this predicament, what can we do to help?
Well, I think the first thing, that's a great question. Pray. If we can have prayer for what's going on in the Middle East. Again, it's not a solution that's going to be resolved in the next day or two, but if people could pray for a political solution in the Middle East, and especially in Iraq right now, but also partner with organizations like World Vision. So if you could go to World Vision, www.worldvision.org, and see what we're doing, and maybe we can partner together. Or if not with World Vision, with other organizations over there. There's a lot of good organizations that are working to meet the needs of the most vulnerable.
When you have sheer numbers like this, it's overwhelming. Can you give us just one particular story, very brief, of something that touched you personally?
Sure. There was a man named Wasim, and he was in a church compound in, well, the Kurdish-controlled area in Iraq. We were able to visit he and his family. There were upwards of 20 people living in a small room together. There was one toilet that wasn't working very well, and he didn't know what the future held. So his first question to me was, what's your name and what do you know about the future? And I said, I don't know about the future, but I know how we can work together right now. And actually, I have his name on my desk so I can pray for him every day.
Yeah, we know who holds the future.
True.
Chris Pulaski, the Senior Director for Emergency Affairs at World Vision. Thanks for joining us on EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, giving thanks by giving the basics. We talk with Supreme Knight Carl Anderson about the Knights of Columbus outreach to the poor. Giving thanks to our Creator for each of you, members of our EWTN family. I'm especially grateful for each member of our EWTN News Nightly team, especially the producer of tonight's show, Catherine Elliott. Thanks for joining us on this Thanksgiving weekend. The Agriculture Department estimates 242 million turkeys were raised in the U.S. this year. Minnesota leads turkey production with 45 million birds raised. North Carolina's second at 35 million. Arkansas at 29 million, and Indiana and Missouri each producing 17 million. They round out the top 5. You're watching EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 28th. I'm Brian Patrick. As we give thanks for the Knights of Columbus and their support of EWTN News Nightly, it's really good to have Supreme Knight Carl Anderson with us tonight. Carl, it's good to have you. As many people rush around shopping for Christmas, the Knights are actually using this day to begin giving. Tell us about that coat drive.
Well, we learned about 5 years ago that there are many children, inner city, poor children, for example, who many days in the winter don't go to school because they don't have a warm coat. And so we decided to partner with our local councils and with some coat manufacturers and provide brand new coats to many of these children. So in the last 5 years, we've distributed about 215,000 new coats to children. And it really is a great Christmas present, a way of opening the Advent season for many of them and to bring a little cheer into their life.
So how are they distributed? That's a lot of coats.
Well, we generally team them up with either a local parish or even more recently, some professional athletes. We were last year with the Denver Broncos. Today we're kicking off with Dallas Cowboys. So little by little, but normally it's inner city school or an inner city parish where they know the people, they know their community, and it works really well for us.
And great timing on this, and I'm sure the kids appreciate the professional athletes as well as the warm coats. Let's also talk about building the domestic church, this in connection with the real focus that our church has on the family this year.
Well, yes, we've heard a lot about the Synod on the Family, and we're very excited that Pope Francis has announced he's coming to the United States for the World Meeting of Families. So this is our way of participating in parishes, in our councils, and individually in families, building the domestic church. This is a concept which goes back to the very early church, but which the Second Vatican Council revived. John Paul II spoke about it a lot, that each family, each Christian family, must within itself reflect all the activities of the church. So it must be a place of healing and reconciliation and forgiveness and mercy and charity and fidelity. It has a Eucharistic center, it has a prayer center. And so we think, as we look at all the dangers that confront families and how many families are vulnerable today, John Paul II once said, the family that prays together receives the strength of God through their prayer. So we think if we can promote this more, and we can get the family to understand it's got a catechetical role, a charitable role, a responsibility in society, a responsibility for other families that are hurting.
Going all the way back to your founding with Father Michael McGivney, wasn't his focus really on helping families?
Well, this was central for him. First, he was one of 13 children. 6 died very early. And then when he was in seminary, he had to leave seminary because his father died. And then his 2 younger brothers followed him into seminary. So Father McGivney saw his widowed mother raising the children on her own. And so that was very much a part of his heart and in founding the Knights of Columbus. How can we help hurting, broken families continue to survive? So family was a big issue for him.
And what an amazing miracle came out of that initiative of Father McGivney to see the Knights of Columbus today. You know, we talk often about the generosity of the Knights in terms of money that's distributed, especially, you know, from natural disasters and persecuted Christians. But aren't the Knights also very active with their volunteer time?
Well, this was the genius of Father McGivney, I think, founding an organization, charity, unity, fraternity, brotherhood, and then engaging men to do what men do best, I think. See a problem, find a solution, and go do it. Go solve the problem. And so we have, you know, we've given a lot of money last year to charity, $170 million, our local councils, but more importantly, 70 million volunteer hours. And so the value of those hours, a lot more. Per capita, average Knight of Columbus dedicates an entire work week volunteer charitable work every year. And so we're very proud of that. But it's like Pope Francis says, Catholic organizations shouldn't just be an NGO. They've got to be informed with the spiritual life of Catholicism. They have to express what it means to be a Christian who cares for their brothers and sisters.
So the Knights are a uniquely Catholic fraternal organization, the largest in the world, as a matter of fact.
Well, we're trying. Yes, but that's the point. Charity, Eucharistic-based. Unity, Eucharistic-based. Fraternity, brotherhood. It has a Eucharistic, it has a Marian dimension to it. And this is what really, I think, gives life to Catholic charity, and is why John Paul II can speak about a charity that evangelizes.
Well, we are so blessed that the Knights of Columbus support EWTN News Nightly, and we're really blessed to have you here on this special day. Carl Anderson, Supreme Knight, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. Up next, we visit the studios where hundreds of floats are designed and built ahead of the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, and avoiding injuries while still enjoying All-American football. A special video Thanksgiving card, compliments of our creative director Angela Mitchell, as we give thanks for each of you. America is a diverse nation, But on this Thanksgiving weekend, we look at a few things that most American households have in common, and we're grateful for this. The U.S. Census Bureau reports 98.6% of households had a gas or electric stove in 2013. That same percentage of households also had a microwave. We're spending a lot of time this weekend, of course, watching TV, mostly football. 98% of American households have a television. Cleaning up after the holiday feast is easiest for the 69% of households with a dishwasher. And more than 99% of American homes have a refrigerator. Today, many of them are filled with leftovers. Only 36% of households have a standalone freezer. Well, you may have seen it yesterday, a fleet of fancy floats winding its way through New York City. How does it all come together? Our Catherine Zeltner takes a look behind the scenes at the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade Studios.
Up with ideas. I'm one of 3 artists here.
Students from New Jersey take an inside look at the plans for one of New York's most famous parades.
It's a lot of work, clearly. When you're building a float like this, it's almost like building a house. You have to start from the very simplest of a sketch and then go through a series of engineer drawings, and then it's the artistry of the Macy's Parade Studio that really comes to life. Metal workers, woodworkers, hand carvers, painters, it all comes to life through the virtue of the magic of the Macy's Parade Studio.
It's magic bringing 10-year-old Samantha Salvamini and her friends up close to some of their favorite cartoon characters.
I think it's amazing because they're all usually all handmade, which is really interesting and really cool, and I was so excited to come when I heard that we are coming.
The tour includes 5 new floats that made their debut at the parade this year. This American favorite is called Cracker Jack Popcorns at the baseball game. Macy's producers built it in the shape of a baseball diamond, complete with an audience in the stands. The Macy's Parade has brought music, massive balloons, and floating stages like these to millions of American viewers for 88 years.
When you see the look on those kids' faces, they see one of these floats that could be 40 feet tall and 60 feet wide, and they're all works of art and floating stages that come down the parade route. We know that we've done our job right when we see those kids smiling.
An artistry aimed at bringing joy.
I think it's cool.
Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. Of course, football is a huge part of this holiday weekend, but the game, of course, is competitive and can even be dangerous. Wyatt Goolsby reports on a warning about the risk of sports injuries.
When you think of fall sports, the hard hits and daily drills probably come to mind. But what you may not realize is that every day, thousands of children across the U.S. sustain an injury, and in many cases, serious enough to go to the ER.
I think it's disturbing that the culture of sports is allowing kids to think that hitting an opponent late or hitting them extra hard to send a message is the right thing to do. That's something I think we can change.
Kate Carr with Safe Kids Worldwide says sports are good for children, but a new survey by the group gives reason to be cautious on the field, showing that 54% of players pushed through injuries and 42% downplayed the pain. 53% of coaches say they feel pressure from parents to keep their kid playing even after an injury. And almost 30% of players give hard hits to opponents.
A lot of kids like to hide their injuries or downplay them so they can stay in the game. Yet that young athlete might be putting themselves at risk for something even more serious.
Carr says communication between players, coaches, and parents is critical. Ray McKenna with Catholic Athletes for Christ says humility and honesty are also key.
That following the example of Christ is laid out through the gospel and the Beatitudes is the proper way to approach all of life, including your sporting life. And for any athlete, what we encourage them to is to have a good relationship, an opening, trusting relationship with their coach or coaches.
The Safe Kids report also says one of the main problems are re-injuries or repetitive injuries. It's why they're advising young athletes to drink lots of water and also stick with regularly scheduled breaks.
All right, thank you, Wyatt Goolsby. And enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Until Monday, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for watching on this Thanksgiving Day weekend. If you're traveling, please be safe. Good night, and may God bless each of you.